Hi everyone, Rebecca at Close.io bringing you our interview series featuring women in sales, where we find out how they grow and thrive both personally and professionally. Today I'm speaking with Alicia Cornell.
Hey everyone, as Rebecca said, I'm Alicia. I'm one of the sales coaches here at Shopify. I specifically work with the Shopify Plus Enterprise division, where we focus on helping merchants grow their businesses bigger and faster on our online commerce platform.
Alicia graduated from Carleton University in Ottawa, and shortly after she joined McGraw-Hill Ryerson, the Canadian division of McGraw-Hill, an educational publishing house. And after a few years of selling there, she traded in textbooks for e-commerce software and joined Shopify in 2014, where she was previously a manager for the Shopify Partner Program and also has worked on the enterprise sales team. Alicia, when I was first introduced to you and when we first connected, it was abundantly clear that you love sales and you're perfect for this series. But you were sort of tricked into your first full-time sales role. So tell us the story behind that and what you learned from that experience.
Yeah, I think tricked pretty much sums it up in a way. But so I guess it all kind of starts back in high school, where many students, they've got that daunting task of like choosing your future, basically like where are you going to go for post-secondary education and what subject areas are you going to focus on, which will eventually lead you to your career. So at that time, I knew sciences were not my jam. I was not that kind of brain thinker, and I really more like leaned towards courses in marketing or accounting, kind of logical courses. So I decided to pursue a degree in business, and I focused specifically on international business. So throughout my 4 years studying business at Carleton, there were 0 courses focused specifically on selling or sales. So I really didn't get any exposure to it, nor had it ever crossed my mind as like a legit career option for me. So it was definitely far from my radar when thinking about what I wanted to do when school was done. So after I graduated, I did what a lot of students do who study abroad, in the sense that I went right back abroad. I walked across that graduation stage and I said, okay, I'm going back abroad. So I lived in Spain, where I'd previously done an exchange year. It was a ton of fun. It lasted about 6 months, and then reality set in and it was time to find a grown-up job. So I started using the career portal that Carleton University provided us. I was looking through jobs, anything with kind of like business development as kind of the description. So I discovered a job posting from McGraw-Hill, and it was titled E-Learning Consultant. Being fresh out of university, I thought, hey, the title of consultant's pretty cool, pretty businessy. So I applied for that role. I ended up making it to the interview process. And when I asked them what the day-to-day of being an e-learning consultant was, it was described as basically having consultative conversations with professors about their course curriculum to help them find the right textbook that would support their course needs. So I kind of stopped listening after they had conversations with professors, because truth be told, I was a super nerd. And the thought of spending time talking to profs about their courses and getting paid for it was like jackpot. It sounded super intriguing. I was offered the role and I accepted. Here I go as a consultant. So day one of onboarding, I was sitting at the headquarters, and it was the super old school 80s office, pink cubicles, maybe a little bit before your time, Rebecca, but it was kind of painful. I was given a brick of a laptop, and it had a Salesforce.com account set up, which I'd never laid eyes on. And day one, I was told to start thinking about making a business plan of how I would tackle all of these accounts in my region to hit my quota. And that was the moment I realized I was not going to go into consulting. I was going to be selling textbooks. So at that time of my life, I just thought there was such a negative stigma around being in sales, being labeled a salesman or a saleswoman. So I actually had thoughts while sitting there during onboarding being like, I need to quit now and get out before my peers find out that this is what I've like graduated to do. Like I was a super nerd. I graduated near the top of my class, and I just kept thinking, did I really study 4 years of international business to become a saleswoman? Aren't I better than that? The answer I came to realize was, hell no. Sales is so hard. And I struggled a lot at the start from lack of confidence, lack of having any sales fundamental skills, but thankfully I had a patient manager. He was super enthusiastic. He took time to explain things. He just made selling look so easy. So I worked with him very closely, got the hang of it, and ended up killing my quota in my first year. And when I got that first sales commission check, I was hooked. Yeah, totally. So all in all, like, I accidentally ended up in a career in sales, but what really drew me in was I loved that I was able to control my input and my income. So every day I could wake up and just put forth the ultimate input. I'd work my butt off, make calls, knock on so many professors' doors, acting incognito as a student during their office hours to try and get the conversation, and then pull the quick trigger and say, hey, I'm actually here to sell you a textbook. Did what I had to do, which we all do in sales. And anyways, that high level of drive and input resulted in higher levels of income. So yes, sales worked out well. And when we actually first spoke, I guess it was 2 years back, you were endeavoring, kind of trying to figure out a career path. Is sales the right thing? One of the things I think I told you is that sales was like, making sales the most desirable career for women was something that I really wanted to do. And so the fact that you're doing this interview series of women in sales is so, so awesome. I haven't done anything myself on a global stage like this, but since that first day of onboarding, being tricked from a consultant to a turned sales professional, I've certainly changed my own belief about sales. And I really do believe it is the most desirable career for any hungry, ambitious young woman. So yeah, in the end, that's my story of getting tricked into sales, but certainly a happy accident at the end of the day.
And it's an honor to feature somebody who was, at the early stages of my journey. So thank you for being here, Alicia, and for your guidance back in the day. Since it's March and sort of like you mentioned, that soul searching season for people in high school and in university, what did you envision for yourself? Since you said it wasn't exactly sales, but what did you envision for yourself? I know you also were very competitive in sports, so I'm curious.
Mm-hmm. So I really, I didn't know in that soul searching, leaving high school, I thought I just had to be destined for a true business development job. And back then I didn't even know what that meant, because sales is a form of business development, right? Sales is at the heart of everything. What I knew for sure was that sales had never crossed my radar, because it's changed drastically, but that stigma was kind of like salespeople are sleazy. You're a car salesman, you're whatever. So that had never crossed my path, but I truly thought, maybe I'll end up working at EDC or the government or something, doing business development across borders. But thank goodness I wasn't doing that, because I can't imagine I would be nearly as fulfilled as I am working full-time in sales.
And Shopify has actually, as an organization, been a great thought leader in the startup community here in promoting sales and speaking to why more sales talent is super important in Canada. Your career at Shopify has actually been a significant part of your journey so far. How did you get the job, and why Shopify? What drew you there?
Yeah, so selling textbooks, the writing was kind of on the wall. I mean, I was selling textbooks, and I myself bought only a handful of textbooks in university. Tried to do what a lot of struggling students do, get by just borrowing books or seeing what's online or using older versions. But I was with McGraw-Hill for about 2 years, just over 2 years. And the writing was on the wall in the sense of okay, this textbook company needs to shift their vision, because textbooks and books in general are dying. So they were on that trend, moving to e-learning resources. But around the same time, actually, a colleague at McGraw-Hill that I'd work with made the switch over to Shopify. And what she was telling me about her day-to-day, about what this company was doing, the incredible vision and drive to help entrepreneurs, it just kind of tapped something in me. And I said, hey, why not get exposure to that? See if it works out. And so it did. So I applied and got my foot in the door. And 4.5 years later, I'm still here. It's a drastically different company. I'm still in love with it as it changes and grows, but it was kind of an individual choice of just, okay, is textbooks and that industry what I want to be a part of, or this new exciting startup? And I just really believed in what they were doing. We have such a visionary CEO, and just making commerce better for everyone. So it worked out well.
And your journey at Shopify, I mean, you've moved through various roles, and one of which actually involved taking a break from sales. And shortly after, you did sort of fall back in love with it. Can you tell us about falling back in love with your passion and just what that part of your journey was like to go through that?
Totally. Yeah. So one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in my career, and it is a lesson I attribute Shopify for because they preach it often, is that you should never view your career as a ladder to climb. To have the most fulfilled, challenging, ever learning type career, you really need to adopt a mindset that your career is a jungle gym. There might be ladders at that jungle gym, so some moves might be up, some moves might be down, some might be lateral, but no matter what direction, it's career advancement because you're going to be gaining new experiences, learning new things, and those will all come together to help you in whatever future role you take on. So with this in mind, sales took me on a little trip to the jungle gym. And it was because I kind of have a love-hate relationship history with sales. And that's basically one where like, I loved that with sales, you're in full control. You determine how hard you work, which determines your income. I did play a lot of sports growing up, like you said, so super competitive. And sales was really a playing field where like top performers rise to the top and you get rewarded, right? With recognition, with income, which allows you to do and achieve other goals in life. So that's what I really loved about sales. The hate part about sales that drove me to that jungle gym is that, as you know too, sales never sleeps. And neither would I. So it's kind of my own fault. But actually, one of the reps on my team that I coach now, her name's Chloe. She actually recently informed me there's a name for this, which I didn't know, but it's called Parkinson's Law. And it basically states that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. And like when I heard her say that, I'm like, yep, that was me in my early days. I basically made a heck of a lot of time available for sales. So it just kept expanding and kept filling my time. And the hate started to come when I started to see my productivity levels go. I was so stressed out all the time, so high strung, just always on. I was on the phone responding to prospects at every hour. I'd be out to dinner with friends and whip out my phone to answer an email because, sales never sleeps. I don't want to miss the prospect when they're hot. And then I kind of had a point where like it was damaging personal relationships. And I got to a place where I was like, I hate this and I hate who I've become. And about 2.5 years ago, I got to the point where like I needed to break up with sales. I needed to switch gears for a while, learn something new. And that's when I hit that jungle gym. So luckily at that time, Shopify Plus and Shopify as a company were growing, and they were starting an enterprise partnership program. And it's a team that actually sits parallel to sales, except you focus on selling through third-party channels or relationships, being our partner ecosystem. It sounded really interesting, so I threw my name in the hat, got that job. So this was kind of a lateral move in the jungle gym. I was remaining in an IC individual contributor role, but I was just going to learn a new aspect to sales, one that was more indirect via third parties. So broke up with sales, became a partner manager, and it was pretty different, especially in the terms of day to day. As a partner manager, I kind of had 3 areas to focus on. One of them was sales support, supporting my partners in their sales initiatives, ramping up their sales team, helping them work through deals. There was the marketing initiatives. How do we bring this partnership to market? How do we find customers or merchants that would benefit from using partners, services, and the Shopify platform together? And then strategic business development, just how do we grow this partnership bigger? What other parties can we introduce in? What makes sense? So kind of 3 different areas: sales, marketing, a bit of BD. And so during my time being a partner manager at the start, I loved all 3 aspects. I loved the diversity of like switching gears between, let's like plan and execute a marketing event, or, let's see what other technologies you're using that we could potentially bring into the mix of this relationship. But what started to happen towards the end is that I became more and more partial to just want to focus my time with my partners, supporting them from the sales perspective. So our like weekly touch points or visits would really just be about like working together to strategize about who we should be targeting, what the messaging looks like, reviewing what's in their pipeline and talking them through how to overcome objections, leveraging like my previous experience as a sales rep and kind of consulting kind of with them. And so through this, it took me a little while to realize, but what I had essentially done was taken this new role far, far away from sales and shifted it back towards sales and kind of in like a sales manager, sales coach role. And the conclusion I drew was that I really miss sales. It's such a high energy, competitive, exciting field to be in. I must have sales in my blood or something, but I just knew I
Absolutely.
needed I knew I needed to get back to it. So after 2 years away from sales, I started to initiate conversations internally to see what it could look like to transition back to sales. And here I am today, super fortunate to be one of the sales coaches at Shopify Plus. I work with an amazing team of enterprise sales professionals every day. I'm absolutely loving it. And I've totally fallen head over heels back in love. And I don't think I'll ever leave. So yeah, that's kind of how it all happened, from love to hate, breaking up, getting back in that relationship. And now I'm sure it's the right one.
Yeah, and actually this morning we had a sales sync up with Stella FD, our Close IO CEO, and the topic of the morning was, Stella, sales is so day to day, and it's so reactive, and it's, hit this goal, and then okay, it's off to like hitting the next goal or the next quota.
Yeah. So balancing the day-to-day, sales is one of the most like volatile careers, in the sense that your highs are higher than any other low, or any other high rather, but then
Right.
your lows are usually pretty low. Like in sales, you're always in the spotlight, either for something
Right.
amazing or highlighted because you're not doing so great. So I think the biggest thing that I learned was you need to get out of that low as fast as possible,
Mm,
because it's a negative spiral, right? Like if you're not having a great day in sales, which could turn into not a great week, which turns into not a great month, and then your whole quota's blown, like it's pretty detrimental. So having the ability to kind of step back, just kind of acknowledge that, like, yeah, you know what? All my calls today were crap. Either I made a mistake, or I wasn't like asking the right kind of questions to dig to pain, or the person on the other end, whatever. There's tons of excuses you can make. I think the biggest thing that I learned, and what I coach with my team, is sales will have bad days, just as
yeah.
in your life you'll have bad days. In any other job, you'll have bad days, but you really need to be able to step back and see the big picture, and just like acknowledge that this was crap, but guess what? Tomorrow's a new day, or the next hour is a new hour, and just kind of get in that positive mindset. Because selling really is one that is heavily controlled by your mental state. Like, do you have a positive outlook? Do you believe you can do it? Then you can.
And going back to your journey in the jungle gym, a lot of people are probably going through that stage in their career where they're doing a bit of soul searching, and they're taking a bit of a break from that constant execution. So how do you sort of balance that? Because how do you know when you're kind of done with the ladder, but now you want to move over to the monkey bars or the swings? Like, how do you make that transition? And also, I've always seen you, Alicia, as a rising star. But with that, a lot of people are going to sponsor you, put bets on you based on a certain trajectory. And there can be a lot of pressure when you have to then, it's almost like going to tell a parent, like, oh, mom and dad, I've decided to do, I always told you I was going to do this growing up, but now I'm going to go do this. And they're like, what? A little bit of that pressure and that nervousness with the people that have invested in you, and the people that you do look up to and kind of want to, I guess, kind of please or satisfy, you want to make happy. So how do you deal with all those moving dynamics?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that, because I definitely felt that pressure where when I broke up with sales at Shopify, I was the top sales rep,
Yep.
and I felt honestly like I was breaking up with my manager, and I was so
Right.
nervous about doing it. And like, there's certainly times where like, I was kind of like, is it worth it? Should I just suck it up and stick it out? But then like, I know that I wouldn't have been happy, and I would have been fulfilled. And again, back to that kind of positive mindset, or just like truly being passionate about what you're selling. It would have been a detriment for me to stay on that sales team, because in my mind, I'd mentally like made a decision, and I just had to follow through on execution, as painful as it would have been. So I think it's just being true to yourself. If you just know that, like, from day one, or wherever you're at in your career starting today, like, your career will be a jungle gym, and if it's meant to come full circle, it will, or if it's meant to set you down another trajectory, it will. So for me, like, jungle gym, I had to leave sales to realize that I missed it and loved it, and then come back. And the person that I was most worried about breaking up with from sales, he's now like the director of sales, and so I'm working under him as a manager, and he is all the greater that he allowed me to leave because all that insight that I gleaned from working in partnerships has come and made me like a more well-rounded coach. And it really balances out our coaches, sales management team, because nobody else has that firsthand partner management experience that I did. And that's a critical part of selling as well. Like, to hit our targets as a company, we do need to work really closely with our ecosystem. So I think if you have an inclination or there's something that you think you want to do it, be open, be transparent about it, and take the risk, I guess. Because if I'd stayed in it, like I said, who knows if I'd even still be at Shopify, because I'd made up my mind that I got to a place where I was like, I need to break up with this. So just take those chances.
And sometimes when you're the first person to make a certain type of move in an organization and it works out well, you serve as a case study, or you set a precedent for other people. And now you've kind of laid a bit of a trail for other people in your team that might want to do the same thing. And it won't feel so daunting to them, because 100%. They can look to you and say, here's somebody, like you said, sales is, the spotlight is always on you, but the spotlight was also on you because, like I said, you were a rising star already, and they see you taking that risk and seeing it pay off. They're going to be more emboldened to do whatever they need to get to the next, to like level up.
Totally. Yeah. And I do have those conversations, and I tell my story, and that's another thing. Like, everyone has such a unique career story that people can learn from. And I wouldn't ever want to keep that to myself. So I do share the good and the bad in the fact of like, it was a struggle. How do you tell your manager that like, hey, this isn't the role for me? You kind of have to be sneaky while you're like talking to the other new potential team. And I think just like transparency is key. It's one of kind of like the lessons looking back that I wish I'd learned earlier, is just like, speak up, speak your mind. People aren't mind readers. If there's something you want to do, be transparent, have that open dialogue with your manager or with your team, because it will just make the whole process a lot easier, versus that kind of like sneaking around while you're interviewing for another role, but still want to seem engaged in this role in case you don't make it in that one. If it's just an open conversation, I think it works best for everybody, you know, and your managers are there to support you too. So they want what's best for you, and they don't know what you want unless you tell them.
And even if they are disappointed at first, I mean, it won't last for long, but they will certainly appreciate the directness, at least, at minimum.
Definitely. I think so.
In 2014, you co-founded a startup called Cottage Lifestyle, and it turned out to be an incredibly bittersweet experience. Can you tell us the story behind that?
Yeah. So when you start working at Shopify, one of the things they encourage you to do is to start your own side hustle using the platform. The reason for this being that you'll be able to better empathize with our merchants, with our customer base, know the struggles that they go through. And there's really no better way to work and help build a product or sell a product than, firsthand understanding what the end user will be going through or what they're looking for. So, when I started, that was something that I knew I wanted to take advantage of. Not everybody has to do it, but if you want to start a side hustle, you certainly have the company support. So I ended up starting the company with two other girls who were working here. We came up with the idea of like a cottage lifestyle brand because we're based in Canada. Our winters are absolutely horrible, and we truly live for the summer. And growing up, we would live for the summer going to the cottage because you could kind of disconnect. You're outside, you're with friends, you're with family, you're eating good food. There was just like, there's so many great things about the cottage, and we were all pretty passionate about it growing up, spending our weekends at the cottage. So we decided to run with that and make a business out of it. So it was born as a lifestyle brand designed to bring people together who share that love and that passion for the summer, being outside, spending your weekends away. And we launched an e-commerce store. And at first we had like a pretty limited product line. We were just kind of selling t-shirts and tanks that had like a cottage lifestyle logo on them. And then, as months went on, we expanded to sell kind of like blankets or sunglasses or socks or hoodies and comfy clothes for the cottage. So it actually really took off. In about 2 months, we sold about $30,000, which none of us had ever expected to, because we were pretty early on in our careers. No idea what this entrepreneurial thing was, but we we sold a lot. And so this newfound success got us starting to think longer term about like viability of this business. So we acted pretty quick. We registered for some industry trade shows, like a cottage and backyard trade show, where we figured we'll set up a table and we'll sell our stuff there, get more exposure. We thought about branching into wholesale because we were only doing D2C online through Shopify, but maybe we could get into some like cottage country little shops and they could sell our t-shirts and stuff along with like milk and whatever else they sell when you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So we were like full speed ahead, so excited, having so much fun. And then it was all brought to an abrupt halt when we were delivered a cease and desist letter. It basically came from a large media conglomerate with a similar sounding name. They were saying that like our brand was infringing on a clothing trademark they had because our brand was too similar sounding to theirs. So lesson number one, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, do your research, check out trademarks, legal business names before you execute and launch a whole brand around it. But basically, like this company wanted us to cease and desist, and we were so confused and hurt, saying like, you guys aren't selling clothing, you're selling magazines, you've got TV shows, like you're in the media space. We want to be in this innovative clothing space. We've clearly tapped into something. Let's work together. So we actually were fortunate enough to have conversations with like their business development department as like three young girls, just like, hey, you know, let's work together. We're young. Your brand's been around since the 80s. You're kind of old and dated. Work with us. Maybe we can do something and collaborate together. Bittersweet. They said no, they weren't open to working with us, and our dreams kind of died overnight. And we were pretty crushed about it. And then the salt in the wound was that a month after they told us to cease and desist, so like around October, November, they launched their own online store selling cottage themed clothing, which was just like, you totally ripped us off. So it's a sore spot, as you can imagine. But on the bright side, being ordered to cease and desist must mean that we were a competitive threat to them, right? So we made something legit. So we kind of rest on those laurels of like, yeah, this all sucks, but like, hey, look what we were capable of. Like we scared a multi-million-dollar media conglomerate, and we were three girls literally doing this out of our mom's basement. So yeah.
Yeah, Alicia and crew had it definitely going on, or else those folks wouldn't have been scared of you guys to begin with.
Yeah, totally.
What advice do you have for people that launch something, get really excited about it, something unexpected happens? How do you deal with disappointment?
Yeah. I wish I could practice what I now preach. Hindsight's always 2020, right? But with disappointment, acceptance is key. You know, it happened, accept it, and just move on to the next thing. And the faster that you can do that, the better. If you sit in your pity party and wallow in it, which we kind of did for at least a year, we would tell our sob story to anyone and everyone who listened. We posted an article on Medium or social media, had all these, this is why we're gone, like listen to our story. But then we didn't like accept it and move on. We just kind of wallowed in it. And I'm pretty sure we may have missed the boat on like reinvigorating our brand. So for any entrepreneur, when you hit a bump, you hit a hiccup in the road in your career or anything like that, when something's disappointing, I think it's okay to be upset, acknowledge that it's a crappy situation, but just move on, because the faster you move on, you're in a better place to put energy and focus into something new, which could turn out to be better than whatever you were disappointed about a little while ago. So again, hindsight's 2020, wish we practiced this, but instead we just wallowed a little too long, and here we are like 3 years later, and have yet to reinvigorate the brand or rebrand it or anything like that. So.
And aside from that, is there anything else, maybe just one little tidbit of advice, if you could only choose one, that you would tell to your younger self, given all the experiences that you've just shared with us?
I think it's speak up for what you want. So going into like, you know, when you're in that struggle of like, you're in one role, shining light on you, there might be that pressure internally. You really have to be true to yourself and speak up for what you want. So I think that's my biggest lesson. I ended up speaking up for myself, maybe just not as soon as I should have or as often as I should have. But it's also the advice that I just preach, because I have friends outside of work or people too in their careers who might be frustrated. And it's kind of like, what are you doing about it? Like, you need to take control. You need to take the reins a little bit and speak up for what you want, because nobody's a mind reader.
Thank you so much for your insights and being a part of our conversation, Alicia. Where can people find you, connect with you, and find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Alicia Cornell, or you can email me. It's Alicia, Alicia, at Shopify.com. So reach me if you want to talk about sales, if you're a young woman endeavoring of whether
Yeah.
sales is the right career for you, just as you did, Rebecca. I think the world needs to do more of that because it's the best career. So yeah.
Yeah, anyone out there, take her up on that offer. She's really helpful.
Awesome.
We'll link all that stuff down below. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, guys.